Welcome, you're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 2734BN. Today's date is March 24th. Patriots, they decided to take a shot at the deep state. Trump went ahead and he filed a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton and the deep state players. I do believe this is just the beginning. Now think about his strategy. Think about what we've been seeing, what we've been witnessing. What is coming out? We know that Durham, he's going to be ready to unseal indictments. Yes, this information is going to be hot and heavy as we reach the summer months. We know that True Social is online. They're working out the bugs. They're going to be bringing a lot more people online, and Trump is going to be on there putting out a lot of information. Then think about Hunter Biden's laptop. Think about Weiss. He's going to be unsealing indictments. Then if you move into crimes against humanity, you can see where this is going. Now think about Trump's strategy right now. Every time something happens in the lawsuit, of course, what is the fake news going to do? They're going to play it down and say he has nothing. You think Durham at this particular time is going to unseal an indictment and then prove that Trump was right every single time? I do believe that this is what we're going to be witnessing. And we'll have to see how this all plays out. But it does seem that the Patriots right now, they are the hunters. And they're going after all these people. It has begun. And once again, how do you introduce evidence legally? Well, Trump is paving the way. He's going to show that all these people are treasonous. And that fake news won't be able to stop. Big tech won't be able to stop it. And we can see it's already started. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about Biden, because we know that he hates walls. He doesn't like the wall down at the border. But around his house, he loves walls. He decided to build a bigger wall around his Delaware house. And there is a public hearing. Now, isn't that interesting? All these people, they love to build walls around their homes, but they hate the wall down at the border to protect our country. This tells you everything you need to know. Now think about Biden's Build Back Better plan. It's a complete and utter disaster. General Flynn put this out on Telegram. He said the following: this must be what building back better means. Number 1, pay to play in Ukraine. 2, China gets in the game. 3, Moscow, Kazakhstan, and more. 4, Ukraine's firing of the prosecutor investigating Burisma. 5, Obama-Biden administration ignoring conflicts of interest. 6, the intelligence community's briefing of Biden. 7, possible collusion. 8, Joe Biden is a lying dog-faced pony soldier. Joe, good luck in Europe. Otherwise, we'll be adding number 9 to your list, World War III in Europe. And we can see that everything that he tries to do, everything that he touches, completely falls apart. It seems like Trump and the Patriots, they set them down this path. And everything that Biden touches, everything that he does, completely falls apart. And the people see it all. They can't even hide it. The fake news can't hide it. Big tech can't hide it. People see it all. And people are upset, angry, and pissed off. They're reaching the precipice. And remember, people reach the precipice at all different times. But as this continues, people are going to see this very, very clearly. Actually, Justin Trudeau, if people decide to speak out, if people decide to say, you know something, we don't like what you're doing here, you can see how they react. And the people out in Europe, they saw it firsthand. The European parliamentary members, they were giving it to Trudeau. And these individuals, they were hitting them hard. We had an MP out in Croatia. He lived under Soviet rule. And he looked at what Trudeau did to those people that were objecting to what he was doing. And he was like, whoa, this is unbelievable. 𝐒𝐈𝐿 put this out and said, Trudeau is going to come home from Europe very angry. He was just forced to sit and listen while he was labeled a dictator in front of the entire European Union, one who trampled women with horses and blocks the bank accounts of single parents. And then we had Christine Anderson in the European Parliament. She let him have it. Take a listen.
95. out that it would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
So the people can see this very, very clearly. The people know what a dictator is, especially those individuals who lived under a dictator. And now the world is seeing this. You see, they thought that they were in control. They thought, oh, no one's going to notice this. But when you have people in a country that you're supposed to be leading, and the people are objecting and rejecting what you are doing, and you don't want to listen to them, ever forget. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is we know that Trump, the Patriots, they've been building the offensive. He's been endorsing many individuals, planning to take back the House, the Senate, actually total control of Congress. Because once that control is there, everything that you're seeing right now, everything that the Biden administration, the puppet masters are doing, can be reversed. Think about what Trump did when he came into the White House. Did he reverse regulations? Did he remove them? Yes. Did he bring back industry? Yes. Did he get us out of the Paris Climate Accord? Yes. Everything can be reversed. But first, you need to show the people the truth. You need to bring them to a certain point where they say, enough is enough. I see the truth now. And people then say, okay, I see what's going on here. As more and more people reach this point, it's much, much easier to take the next step. And the next step is to use Congress to go after many of these individuals. Remember, with the House right now, with Pelosi, they're not going after themselves, the criminals. You need certain individuals in these positions that are patriots, that are not blackmailed, that are not bought off, to do the job. Now, what's very interesting is House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy. He said that House Republicans have sent dozens of preservation notices across the federal government to agencies and departments throughout Democrat President Joe Biden's administration, ordering them to preserve documents in anticipation of an eventual subpoena from the House Republicans after the 2022. Now, this is going to become very, very interesting. And I do believe that this is part of the Patriots' plan, because once you have control of the Congress, you can start pushing and getting a lot of the information. Now, take that and think about what Durham is going to be releasing. Think about Trump's lawsuit. Think about what Weiss is going to be releasing. Can the Congress use all this information? Yes, because once it's made public, this can be used. It's not a conspiracy. You're getting the declassified information. You're getting the indictments. You're getting the evidence that you need. This is going to be a complete and utter disaster for them. Now, of course, before we get there, what does the deep state have to do? Well, they're going to have to shut everything down, which they're already in the process of doing. If you notice, the censorship is growing by leaps and bounds. Soon, they're just going to shut everything down. Sean Davis put this out on Twitter. Twitter is currently censoring links to the Federalist news stories, falsely claiming that our stories are violent or misleading content that could lead to real-world harm. Stories about KBJ, Ron DeSantis, Hunter Biden, and Mojalika Art are all being maliciously censored by Twitter. Yes, because they don't want that information out. The same goes with YouTube. The same goes with Facebook, Instagram, you name it. This is why Trump started True Social. This is why Trump has the acquisition company, because everything is about to change. And I do believe things are changing in Ukraine. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean that, oh, they're changing it and starting a war. I mean, Putin's in there and he is denazifying the country. He's removing the deep state apparatus, removing the money laundering schemes, giving the country back to the people of Ukraine. That is what we're witnessing right now. Now, of course, the deep state, they're going to be pushing their agenda. Remember, there's always two sides to all of this. The deep state, they do believe that they have the upper hand. They're going to push their agenda. Actually, this is what the Patriots want. They want people to see this. They want people to understand what their agenda is. because soon you're going to be hearing the truth. And once you start hearing the truth, you start to put the pieces together. Now, think about the border right now. People thought, oh, no, we need an open border. We need the people to come in. Remember, before Trump started building the wall, talking about the border, this is what Obama and the rest were talking about. Of course, the fake news hit a lot of it. But as soon as Trump put everything in place, secured the border, started building the wall, people saw their plan very, very easily. Now we have the same deep state players. They're bringing in the refugees from all different countries, like Afghanistan, like Ukraine now. They're planning to bring in 100,000 Ukrainian migrants and refugees. People now are seeing this. This is going to backfire on them. And remember, this can be reversed in the end. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is we can see the Ukrainian forces, the neo-Nazis, they keep using video game footage to say, look at the battle here. 𝐓𝐑𝐔𝐌𝐏 on Telegram put this out. Official account of Ukrainian Ministry of Defense uploading Arma 3 videos. They're doing it once again. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that 𝐓𝐑𝐔𝐌𝐏 on Telegram broke into Mariupol, and they started to look around, and they saw that the Azov soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine were knocked out of that area that night. And also, they saw corpses of Nazis on almost every floor in a high-rise building, which tells you that the Russian forces are going in and hitting the Nazis and removing them. They're not arresting them, they're removing them. And this is exactly what Putin said he was going to do. Besides the fact that I have yet to hear someone coherently explain why Russian soldiers would target theaters and hospitals, the timing of these attacks on civilians doesn't make much sense. Russia has been trying to establish humanitarian corridors, but don't kid yourself, these corridors aren't so much about providing safe passage for civilians. That's a secondary purpose. The primary purpose is to give Ukrainian fighters a way out, a chance to lay down their arms. Russia did that in Syria, and in many cases it worked. The intentional targeting of civilians is counterproductive to establishment of those corridors, and Russia knows that. No fighter is going to lay down his weapon and leave if he believes Russia might drone strike him and other unarmed people making their way through the corridor. Absolutely, and it's the same strategy that they used in Syria. And what happened to the Islamic State in Syria? Completely wiped out. Remember, Assad invited Putin into Syria to get rid of the Islamic State. Who was controlling the Islamic State? Obama. He took all the controls away from the armed forces and dictated to them where they needed to bomb. He wasn't destroying the Islamic State. He was allowing them to grow in Syria. Assad invited Putin in to help with the terrorist organization. Then Trump joined actual forces with Putin, and they started to destroy the Islamic State. Trump gave the control back to the military and said, go after the threat. And that's exactly what they did. But we can see that the deep state players, they don't want Putin removing the neo-Nazis. They don't want Putin to give the country back to the Ukrainian people, which means the deep state players don't have control over Ukraine. The deep state players, they want to stop this any way they possibly can. And they're going to try to push World War III. They've been trying to do this from the very, very beginning. Why do you think they told Poland to fly their jets into there? Because they knew this would start World War III. I don't believe Biden is able to do this because of devolution. If Biden could do this, he would have brought in U.S. troops already. It would be a complete and utter disaster. So they're doing the same thing that they've done in the past with Syria and other countries. They're drawing a red line, and they're trying to say, well, if Russia launches weapons of mass destruction in Ukraine, then Russia has crossed the red line, and the United States will do something. I'm talking about the deep state players. The United States, the people, we don't want to do anything. So they're already doing the same thing that they've done in the past. Haven't we learned from the past that this is all lies? Were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Remember, Obama was out there saying if Assad uses chemical weapons on his own people, that's crossing a red line. Was it Assad using chemical weapons? They didn't care about that. Remember, with the news. And let me just read a portion of this. And it says, 2 leaked stories from the Pentagon have exposed the lies of mainstream media about how Russia is conducting the Ukraine war in a bid to counter propaganda intended to get NATO into the conflict. The Pentagon took the bold step of leaking 2 stories to reporters that contradict those tales. Russia's conduct in the brutal war tells a different story than the widely accepted view that Putin is intent on demolishing Ukraine and inflicting maximum civilian damage, and it reveals the Russian leadership's strategic balancing act. So here's a headline from Newsweek. Putin's bombers could devastate Ukraine, but he's holding back. Here's why. The piece quotes an unnamed analyst at the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency saying, "The heart of Kiev has barely been touched, and almost all the long-range strikes have been aimed at military targets." A retired U.S. Air Force officer now working as an analyst for a Pentagon contractor added, "We need to understand Russia's actual conduct. If we merely convince ourselves that Russia is bombing indiscriminately, or that it is failing to inflict more harm because its personnel are not up to the task or because it's technically inept, then we are not seeing the real conflict." As of the past weekend, in 24 days of conflict, Russia has flown 1,400 strike sorties and delivered almost 1,000 missiles. By contrast, the United States flew more sorties and delivered more weapons in the first day of the 2003 Iraq War. A proportion of those strikes have damaged and destroyed civilian structures and killed and injured innocent civilians, but the level of death and destruction is low compared to Russia's capacity. "I know it's hard to swallow that the carnage and destruction could be much worse than it is," says the DIA analyst, but that's what the facts show. This suggests to me, at least, that Putin is not intentionally attacking civilians, that he perhaps is mindful that he needs to limit damage in order to leave an out for the negotiations. A second retired U.S. Air Force officer says, "I am frustrated by the current narrative, that Russia is intentionally targeting civilians, that it is demolishing cities, and that Putin doesn't care. Such a distorted view stands in the way of finding the end before true disaster hits or the war spreads to the rest of Europe. I know that the news keeps repeating that Putin is targeting civilians, but there is no evidence that Russia is intentionally doing so. In fact, I'd say that Russia could be killing thousands more civilians if it wanted to." These Pentagon sources confirm that Putin and the Russian Ministry of Defense have been saying all along that instead of being stalled, Russia is executing a methodical war plan to encircle cities, opening humanitarian corridors for civilians, leaving civilian infrastructure like water, electricity, telephone, and internet intact, trying to avoid as many civilian casualties as possible. Plus, there's no evidence of chemicals. The second article directly undermines Biden's dramatic warning about false flag chemical attacks. Reuters reported the United States has not yet seen any concrete indication of an imminent Russian chemical or biological weapons attack in Ukraine, but is closely monitoring streams of intelligence for them. It quoted the Pentagon official as saying, "There is no indication that there's something imminent in that regard right now." So the Pentagon is countering the entire argument of the Biden administration and letting people know that what they're saying, the propaganda that's coming out there, is not true. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is we can see that North Korea is back in the fold. That didn't take long. And they tested an intercontinental ballistic missile, possibly capable of reaching the United States. Now, where did we hear that before? Oh, that's right. When Trump was in the White House, these are the stories that continually came out. Then Trump made peace. Now we have North Korea, or is it North Korea, doing the same exact thing. And the fake news is building it up. Now remember, their 16-year plan was to bring us into war. Who was going to start the war? North Korea. And here we are once again. Now, I do believe this is being set up by the Patriots to bring Biden down this path. Remember, each step of the way, Biden is feeling pain because everything he touches turns to crap. And the people see this very, very easily. 𝐓𝐑𝐔𝐄 put this out on Telegram. He said the following: "Just want to point out that in the last 5 years, Epstein Island, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Ukraine have all been exposed and shut down on the deep state. Do you see the big picture? Think about this for a second. Trump communicates with Kim Jong-un. Trump visited Saudi Arabia, and then all of a sudden they started to arrest people. And then Epstein, well, he was captured, and he didn't kill himself, and Epstein Island was closed down. Now, we have Putin inside of Ukraine, shutting down Ukraine. Don't you find this very interesting? It seems that they're shutting down the entire deep state and countering all their plans. But the other thing that's very interesting is that it just came out today that Trump, he is suing Hillary Clinton. and others over Russian collusion allegations. So, the court document is out there, and it's Donald J. Trump against Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, DNC Services Corporation, Perkins Coie, Michael Sussman, Mark Elias, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Charlie Dolan, Jake Sullivan, John Podesta, Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, Nellie Orr, Bruce Orr, Orbis Business Intelligence, Christopher Steele, Igor Danchenko, Newstar, Rodney Jaffe, James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Kevin Kleinsmith, Andrew McCabe, John Doe 1 through 10, and many other people. Don't you find that very interesting? And if you read through the documentation, first of all, Trump wants a trial by jury. And if you look on page 2, Section 3, it says the scheme was conceived, coordinated, and carried out by top-level officials at the Clinton campaign and the DNC, including the candidate herself, who attempted to shield her involvement behind a wall of third parties. He's laying it out there. Very interesting. In the Matrix on Telegram put this out and looked at the lawsuit and saw a line in the lawsuit, and it says suit 470 racketeer corrupt organization. 470, that's interesting, because if you go back to post 1660, this is July 1st, 2018, down below it says something very interesting. It says think 470. Is this a Q proof? It's starting to seem that way. Now, the Washington Pundit put this out on Telegram, and this is what it says. Unlike criminal RICO cases, civil RICO lawsuits almost never get past the motion to dismiss. I hate to say it, but the chances of President Trump succeeding in the suit are very low. He probably knows this, however, and is bringing the case for other reasons. By filing the lawsuit, Trump is shielding himself from defamation claims. Allegations and legal filings are mostly immune from defamation. It allows him to put out the facts about what happened without fear countersuits being filed in hostile jurisdictions. It also allows pro-Trump or honest media to report on the allegations because reporting on what is contained in legal filings gives journalists immunity from libel. The Mueller team used this tactic all the time, as did Little Binger in the Rittenhouse trial, to relentlessly smear the kid, and allowed hacks like Morning Joe and CNN to just run with it. Things to watch out for. Does Trump survive the motion to dismiss? Clearing that hurdle alone would be a huge win, as we've seen in some of the Project Veritas cases. B. President Trump was very smart to bring the case in Southern District of Florida, where he at least has a chance of being assigned an honest, impartial, fair judge. The defendants will probably attempt to get the case transferred to the SDFL, to either D.C. or New York. If that happens, it's just a matter of time before it gets dismissed. I do believe that Trump did this for a specific reason. How do you introduce evidence legally? He knows that Durham is going to be unsealing indictments. He knows the information about Hunter Biden's laptop is going to be coming out. Then add on top of that crimes against humanity. He is timing this perfectly. Now people can talk about it, and you can release the evidence legally, have the declassified information out there. I do believe this is a coordinated attack against these individuals. This is going to be a complete and utter disaster for everyone. Think about Trump coming up on Truth Social. You think he's going to be tweeting about this? Of course he is. Do you think you're going to see a lot of information about there? Yes, it's going to be unbelievable. And what's very interesting about all of this, think about the timing. Because if we go back to 3-year deltas, this is March 26, 2019. This is post 3213. There's a picture of Obama, Clinton, James Comey, McCabe, and it says FISA-gate. The timing is very, very interesting. Think about post 3900, March 26, 2020. This is a 2-year delta coming up in 2 days. Down below it says registration of certain organizations, activities affecting armed forces generally, activities affecting armed forces during war, recruiting for services against the United States, enlisting to serve against the United States. It seems that the deep state players have done all of these things. Post 3901, March 26, 2020, coming up on a 2-year delta, gives us a definition of patriot and traitor. A patriot, a person who loves, supports, and defends his or her country and interests with devotion. a person who regards himself or herself as a defender, especially of individual rights, against presumed interference by the federal government. A traitor, a person who betrays another, a cause, or any trust. A person who commits treason by betraying his or her country. The timing of this is just unbelievable. Post 3903, March 26, 2020. In brackets, infiltration instead of invasion. Trump, the Patriots, Durham, Weiss, you name it. They're all coming together. They're going to show how they infiltrated the country instead of invading the country. And the foreign governments had help from within. To find treason. Think about what's going on right now. Trump and the Patriots, they have the upper hand. They are going after the deep state. They, and I'm talking about the Patriots, they are the hunters. And these deep state players, they are the hunted. And this is going to get more and more difficult as time goes on. Remember, Trump, every step of the way, he's going to be inflicting pain on these individuals. There is no escape. There are no deals. Nobody's escaping this. It's been planned out from the very beginning. And now, the Patriots are making their move.